Hey everyone, I wanted to go over some new and exciting news that we got for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak that's set to release onto the Nintendo Switch and on PC next summer. And that's the fact that I kind of want to break down three separate things that a lot of people have been discussing regarding the new teaser trailer that we got for Sunbreak. And I want to break this down into three specific segments in this video and try to talk to them at length and try to break down pretty much all the information that we have available for each one. First and foremost, we're going to focus on Luna Garen. This is the new monster that's showcased in the trailer. Lastly, the thing that I want to tackle is Elgato. This is the new area, the new outpost that you're going to be able to visit in this new expansion. So I'm going to do three different little sections. I'm going to timestamp them in the bottom of the video and the video description, so you can definitely fast forward and skip any part that you actually are more interested in. So when it comes to Luna Garen, the first and foremost thing you need to know is that this is a fanged wyvern. And for that reason, it's being compared very easily to Odogaron and even Tobi Kadachi. Like, rightfully so, because they pretty much share the same skeleton. But within that same logic, you also need to consider that it's a fanged wyvern no different than Great Garas, Great Gyros, or even Dogogama. So in that regard, it doesn't necessarily look the same, but it's also the same kind of a thing. A lot of people have been calling pretty much Luna Garen the Odogaron for Monster Hunter Rise, which I guess it does make sense, but it also means that the chances of Odogaron actually appearing into Monster Hunter Rise are going to be greatly diminished, only because if they're going to have a brand new version of that same type of monster, why would they bring the other one that was really popular in Monster Hunter World? It kind of doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. And again, we already have Tobi Kadachi to begin with, so, it is what it is. We don't necessarily need it anymore. One of the things that I have not seen being compared to a lot, though, is the fact that this monster looks very similar to Orugaron. This is a monster that was available in Monster Hunter Frontiers, and there was two very specific ones. There was, of course, Kamu Orugaron, and there was Nono Orugaron. But these were fanged beasts. These actually fell a little bit more in line with, like, a Bishitan or Archeros. So they're not necessarily even the same skeletal types, which again, remember, developers, that's how they actually decide what monsters they're going to make based on the skeletal types, so they can decide their movements and their actions and even their personalities or traits a little bit better. So while Luna Garen may really look like Kamu Orugaron or Nono Orugaron, it's not really the same type, but I just thought it was worth mentioning that when it comes to like monsters, werewolf types that kind of already look like one another, we kind of already had that in Frontiers, and it's not necessarily all that new and original. We do have the idea, of course, that the monsters that are going to be showcased in Sunbreak are going to be Western yokai themed, essentially in the same opposite idea of where they were in Rise. Where in Rise, a lot of them are Japanese folklore-like monsters from like their lore, and in the West we already have a vampiric type monster with Malzeno, and now a werewolf type monster with Luna Garen. So this is pretty much lining up exactly how all the information that we had pre Monster Hunter Rise that told us what the expansion was going to be like, that's lining up properly. In the same vein, we also knew ahead of time that there was most likely going to be 5 different areas that were going to be introduced with the expansion. Now, let me make this very clear. That doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be 5 differently, completely new maps. That's not what that means. It just means 5 new areas to explore. That could actually mean the base. That could actually mean just one whole new area for, think of it like the Coral Palace, just one area where you fight the ultimate boss, the ultimate monster, whatever that could be for Sunbreak, and then maybe 2 to 3 different areas that are added in the expansion, or maybe just 2 or even 1. We don't necessarily know. But when we actually take a look at the teaser trailer that they provided us with Luna Garen, we actually get to see pretty much a brand new area. Now, again, a lot of people were saying on social media with the hot takes that it's just a flooded forest. I don't believe that. I don't buy it at all. There's multiple reasons for why that is. First and foremost, I think, and I've seen a lot of people bring this up as well, that this is actually the remade version of Tundra. Remember that Tundra was introduced in Monster Hunter 3. And another thing that is comparison to Monster Hunter 3 is the fact that we got, the Flooded Forest. The Flooded Forest, it is an expansion or a continuation or a remake or a revision or a reimagining. Any way you want to spin it, that is pretty much the same area that we had in Monster Hunter 3 that was brought up again into Monster Hunter Rise. The same thing with the desert is not necessarily all that different. They're just reimaginings of those old maps with the new ideas, new traversal options, and everything that's included when it comes to Monster Hunter Rise. I think the tundra is pretty much what we're looking at here. And there's multiple reasons as to why you could consider why that is. First and foremost, the tundra had a lot of snowy areas, a lot of like foresty, but also really right next to the mountain. And then if you actually think about it in Area 6, when you would actually climb up the mountain, remember that those maps were divided. So they didn't necessarily have to have you climbing up a really high place to get into another area. A lot of areas in Monster Hunter 4 did that, but in 3, they weren't necessarily doing that as much. And in 3, basically in the tundra, what you had is Area 6, where you were actually on top of the clouds of like the actual snowstorm, and you would actually be able to see the moon directly with trees and the mountains and everything on the side. And it looked very similar to what you're actually seeing in this trailer here. You're actually seeing just a little bit of the moon. You're actually seeing a lot of trees and a lot of ice covered mountain. So to me, this is pretty much the reimagining or a remake of the tundra in their own vision for Monster Hunter Rise. Another thing that also gives me a lot of things to consider is the fact that both Malseno and now Luna Garen, every single time that we see them, they're climbing up something. They're trying to get closer to the moon for whatever reason. I think that the moon plays a big role into whatever this expansion is going to be. I think also the fact that the name of the expansion is Sunbreak, there's going to be a twist to this, obviously. The sun is going to be involved, but right now they're just showing the moon. And they focus, in fact, in the trailer in a very specific shot where he's just howling at the moon. Again, he's a werewolf. He's going to howl. Wolves do that. But Malzeno did the same thing, and that's a vampiric dragon. So, you know, it's not necessarily that surprising to me that the moon is going to be playing a massive role into this. One of the ideas that I've seen a lot of people toss is the fact that maybe the moon is, in fact, going to be one of the things that makes the old maps, pretty much the ones that we're visiting right now, going to be a little bit different. So there's going to be, you know, different shaders, different colors to the maps that we visit. And these monsters are going to be appearing in those old maps, presumably for one hunter, specifically their introductions, because of the same moon effect. That's just a theory that I've seen tossed around. Maybe that makes sense to some people. I don't know. But I think what we're looking at here, ultimately, it is the tundra. It is a remake or a revisioning of that old map. So again, there is connections to Monster Hunter 3 already in this game with both Kokoto Village and Poke Village. And when it comes to speaking about new areas, of course, we have to mention Elgato. This is going to be the new outpost you are going to be visiting in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. And it's going to be pretty much the same experience that you had in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, where you're going to a pretty much expanded new area, not that far off from where you actually were, but it's going to give you access to these pretty much new areas. One of the things that I have seen already people comparing it to is that from a distance, it actually just looks kind of like Camera Village. There are higher mountains a little bit closer. They're not necessarily like stuck to the forest or like even the ocean all that much. Perhaps from a different angle, you can see it differently. But there's obviously a lot of like mountains right next to it from the angle that is being presented to us from now. So a lot of people are basically saying showcasing that new area of Tundra or that new version of Tundra most likely is very near to that pretty much Elgato area. Now, one thing that needs to be made clear is that a lot of people are also saying that this is most likely going to give you access to the capital that they also mentioned in the story in Monster Hunter Rise. I don't think that's actually the case. I don't think you're going to actually be able to do that. When they do showcase Rondine's sister, she also mentions that it's a royal matter, meaning that it does have to do with the capital, but we don't necessarily have to know or even visit there to actually know that there's other things going on, like politically speaking, when it comes to the lore of the game. And they don't necessarily really have to do anything with Camera Village or you as being the hunter from there. Maybe they'll eventually require help. Maybe it'll be one of those things where they send you off again to fight that big ultimate baddie, that big new monster that obviously we haven't necessarily seen, that is going to be the big boss in the game. So I can definitely see it turning into a thing where they require your help for one reason or another, because you are the hero of Camera Village, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be visiting that area or anything along those lines. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today. Hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on the information that the teaser trailer provided us with. But again, it's kind of like in typical Capcom fashion. They don't go into details. And interestingly enough, the websites haven't necessarily updated anything regarding it. They just have the trailer linked and that's about it. So, you know, they're still pretty much trying to have all the information close to their chest and they're not giving us a lot to go over with. So again, a lot of it has just been a lot of discussion from people, from third party kind of information discussion, and just people trying to pick off information and see what they could come up with to see what does this ultimately mean for the full expansion that we're expecting to get next summer. But if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.